Hello and welcome to Beyond Graves and Stars. My name's Andy. I'm a massive horror nerd and I like a bit of sci-fi too. This podcast focuses on both of those genres. Few episodes up so far, so if you haven't checked them out, do go back and check out the two I've done on the Candyman franchise, and done one comparing the Time Machine from 1960 with its 2002 remake. And this is going to be the first of 5 episodes I'm going to do over the course of time, focusing on the Phantasm franchise. I'd only ever seen the first one, and I rewatched it with film scholar Adam Whybray, who had never seen it, and this episode is going to be our conversation about the first movie. He didn't hate it. In fact, he quite enjoyed it. So he did say he's going to come back and talk about the other movies with me soon. We're going to get them out as soon as we can. He's a busy man, busier than I am, so we'll do them when we can. And there'll be other episodes coming up in between those, of course. Do hang around for the end of the show because I'm just going to mention a recent Blu-ray release of a movie from 1987 that I really like and has not been released in the UK until now. So I'm just going to give a quick word about that. Don't forget to follow me, Andy Martin, ANDEE Martin, on YouTube and Blue Sky, and follow the pages for Beyond Graves and Stars on Instagram, Facebook, Spotify. Oh, this is tiring. Apple Podcasts and Amazon Music. That's the plugs out of the way. Now, please enjoy the show. Phantasm. We've just watched it. Second watch for me ever. And Adam, your first watch.
It was my first watch.
Obviously, you've heard of the film, hence you wanted to do it.
Yeah.
What's your sort of history with it? Do you know much about it?
I was trying to think of this. I might have heard of it from an old sort of cult film website blog called Not Coming to a Theatre Near You, which I read a lot as a teenager, sort of in the early 2000s. And I might have heard of it through that. They used to do a sort of 31 Days of Halloween thing.
Okay. Yeah.
In October. And I think I read about it then. It cropped up on the Evolution of Horror podcast, probably for their sort of sci-fi aliens series. Yeah. And they did a deep dive into the whole series. And I just thought it sounded fascinating because it's rare that a film it's an indie film, largely directed, edited, written by one guy. It's rare that a film like that ends up with a whole bunch of sequels. Yeah,
it's one that I've only ever seen the original.
Yeah.
There's 4 sequels, and growing up for me, I remember seeing the imagery, video shops. I'd see them, and looking into it. The first sequel came out about 10 years after the original. Maybe 9, but it was in the 80s, and it was sort of lumped in with the Nightmare on Elm Streets and that sort of thing. And I think back then I probably thought it was a cheaper version of these sort of franchises, not realising that it was originally before that.
Yeah, and it's not a slasher. I mean, it's obviously same year as Halloween, although as you pointed out, it would have been in production before Halloween.
Yeah, they filmed it for over a year.
Yeah.
So quite interestingly, they hired the equipment. And he'd hire it on a Friday so that he could pay for one day and give it back on the Monday. So use it all weekend. That's how it worked. And they saved a lot of money doing that.
Yeah, it sounds like the production's a bit like Peter Jackson's Bad Taste.
Yeah.
Although this is in a way a lot less gonzo than Bad Taste and a bit more earnest. But I think it's got just as many sci-fi influences as it has horror influences, which is what sets it apart.
Yeah.
From say the later slashers that you get in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean it starts as more of a horror, then evolves into a sci-fi. But there's sci-fi references with Dune all the way through it.
Yeah.
You pointed out one I didn't even think about. There's a box.
Yeah, he has to put his hand in to test the message being that the only fear is fear itself. Yeah. And it's very similar to the one that Paul has to put his hand in Dune.
Yeah.
I mean, Lynch's Dune wouldn't have been out by this point, but you can definitely imagine that the novels were...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unlike us that have read the novel.
They're on my dad's shelves when I grew up. I thought the covers looked really interesting.
Yeah. But a bit thick for mine.
Yeah.
Did you want to a quick sort of summary of the plot. I know you've only just said.
Yeah,
it's a bit mad. Isn't
okay, yeah. So there's a young lad called Mike, who is living with his older brother Jody, and the pair of them have lost their parents. We don't know how, but they died a couple of years ago at the same time. And it starts off with this sort of nighttime rendezvous between this sort of hippie, I guess, some guy who looks like a bit of a stoner, and some vampy woman in a graveyard, and then she stabs him.
Yeah.
And that's the start of the film, and it turns out this is some kind of family friend, or friend of Jodie's, and Jodie goes along to the does he go to the funeral? He says he doesn't really like funerals. But Mike clearly is very anxious about his brother. He goes to see some kind of soothsayer, the mum of possibly his only friend that he has. And he says he's really worried. He's worried that Jodie's going to leave him and that he's not going to have anyone to look after him, basically. And, he clearly adores his brother. Yeah. And this adoration is to the extent that he basically stalks his brother perpetually. And no matter what his brother's doing, Mike will be there in the bushes with binoculars, just watching his brother anxiously all the time.
Yeah. Not very far behind, so that he would actually notice him, but he never does.
Yeah. And so he's watching the funeral, which I'm sure he could have just gone to, but no, he's watching it from the comfort and safety of the bushes through his binoculars, and he notices that the funeral director has eerily superhuman strength and picks up the coffin of the deceased on his own and just bundles it into the back of the hearse. And he finds as he mouths some rude words. Doesn't say them out loud, which is good.
Because he's young.
He's young. He's only 13. Although he spends a lot of time riding around on an electric scooter, driving a car. Later, he's a great mechanic.
He does lots of stuff with guns, knives,
stunts.
At one point he blows a door open with a
shotgun shell, like sellotaped to a hammer. So he's a very resourceful young guy, Mike. He's had to grow up fast, basically. So he sort of becomes intrigued by this, I guess, the crematorium, which is this sort of spooky Bates-like motel on a hill. And like the more he investigates, the more he starts to realise that there are weird things going on, basically, involving aliens and metallic surveillance spheres, and corpses being shrunk down very small so they can withstand the gravity of a different planet.
Yeah. It's bonkers. I think that's a really, considering this is your first watch, you just said it, that's a pretty good summary.
Thanks.
But, well done. I'm sorry to put you on the spot there, mainly because I didn't want to do it, because you summarised it a lot better than I would.
Yeah, it's not exact. I've read people say these films are incoherent. I wouldn't quite go that far. I think it's more that there's a lot of ideas. Some of the ideas make more sense than others, and they're quite kind of thinly sketched. Yeah. Like, it doesn't fill in all the details.
The director is Don Coscarelli, isn't it? We haven't said his name yet. He did say that influences on the film were Invaders from Mars, which I've never seen the original, actually. I've only seen the Toby Hooper remake, which is apparently pretty much the same film. And Suspiria. And with Suspiria, not a lot's given away, is it? It doesn't explain a lot. Short, 90-minute, it's a classic. So I can see that basically what he's saying is he doesn't want to give a lot away.
Yeah, there's a bit of dream logic to it.
Yeah, and you leave a lot to interpretation, which I think works for the film. It is a bit nuts. And this is my second watch of it. The first time I watched it was a long time ago. I enjoyed it a lot more this time because I sort of know what to expect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's great that the protagonist is 13. I just looked up; he was 14 when they filmed it.
Okay, yeah, he looks young. You can tell that he's still a kid.
Yeah, and he gives a great performance and I think kind of real performance as well. And with him, Reggie, he's sort of his friend, psychic, ice cream seller guy. and those two, they use their real names.
Oh,
the,
really?
the actors, and I think for a few of the characters they do. And Coscarelli said this was so it felt more real to the actors when they're talking. And there's a making of documentary on the Blu-ray, a lot about how the relationship between the brothers went over to real life and they really got on.
Well, there's a lot of male friendship in the film. I think it's a very male film. I think it's fair to say that girls and women in the film get pretty short shrift.
Yeah, there's his friend who I don't even remember the character's name.
Yeah,
the friend who takes as a super saiyan type lady. There's not much of a character there at all.
No, yeah. and she seemingly don't want to give. Are we being sort of spoiler?
Yeah.
Spoiler. I mean, she seemingly survives, but we think she's dead, and then maybe it's like, oh no, actually she escaped, but we don't see her again, and that's that.
Yeah, and to be honest, the way it opens with a graveyard sex scene, and there's not a lot of sex or nudity in the film, but within minutes there's bare breasts on screen.
It's really fast. It's funny for a film that's not especially pervy, and I don't think it's not the main concern of the film. It's a film, I guess, largely about death and like this young guy trying to navigate that, as well as a whole bunch of loopy sci-fi ideas that the director's having fun with. So it's a bit odd. It's clearly not a film you would easily advertise as being, hey, check out these sexy ladies.
Yeah. I mean, this is this kind of film that I've got several female friends who like horror or are starting to like horror, and I want to show them these films. And I thought I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten until I watched the making ofs where they talk about it. And I didn't realise it was that early in the film. And I just sort of had the scenario of bring some mates to watch it. Yeah. And then straight away that happens. They're like, hang on, Andy. This is another one of these sleazy... But it isn't. I mean... It
isn't. And I think maybe it helps that the perspective of the film is so aligned with this sort of 13-year-old kid. Yeah. And it does make it seem weirdly innocent. Yeah. I think it's a combination of it being so wedded to his perspective and the fact that the male friendships in the film do feel really warm.
Yeah.
And like you can tell that they're genuinely getting on, and it does make it seem less sleazy than you would imagine, like describing it.
Yeah. Do you want a fun anecdote about the sex scene?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Originally, it was supposed to be just in her bra.
Okay.
And when they come to filming it, apparently all the guys on set gathered round, and she said, look, I want to do this as a closed set. And they were like, well, I'll tell you what, we'll get a body double in instead. So they filmed that bit separately.
Okay.
And then when it's at the premiere where she sat with her mum, they realised the body double wasn't in a bra, it was topless.
Yeah.
And apparently her mum just turned to her and said, they should have used yours are better. That was on the making of it. The actress, Kathy Lester, who didn't do a lot actually. She's got a cameo in one of the sequels, and the role comes back in another. Yeah, which is the character's called Lady in Lavender, who is basically a female version of the Tall Man villain.
Yeah, and possibly the same. I mean, it's hard to say if they're separate characters or whether it's a disguise that the Tall Man kind of dons to try to seduce men into.
Going by what I know about the sequels, he does that, especially with Reggie later on in the sequels. I want to talk about the character of Reggie. Who is it? They call him Reg or Reggie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who is played by? Did I even make a note of the name? Reggie Bannister, who went on to become a bit of a cult actor after this and been in a lot of horror films.
Yeah, I looked up his IMDb, and he's been in a lot. As you say, he's in his 80s now, and he's still active.
Yeah, pops up in stuff like Wishmaster and things like that. And the character, befriends. Mikey, the main kid, or is his friend?
Well, it seems why this ice cream guy is just. He just seems like. He seems like this sort of amicable possible burnout, right? Like this guy who is a sort of hippie, and he's got an ice cream van, and he just sort of hangs around and. Yeah,
plays a bit of music.
He picks up a guitar, plays some music.
Yeah, he's a bit Francis Rossi from Status Quo. He's got the same haircut, dresses a bit like him. Yeah, just a cool older guy, and it reminds me of have you seen the Critters films?
Only the first one.
It reminds me a bit of the character Charlie in that, who befriends the young lad and then becomes more and more in the other movies. But obviously none of us have seen them. So hopefully we're going to watch the others and talk about them in other episodes.
Yeah.
So we can talk as we go about how this character develops.
Yeah, and he becomes more of a father figure to Mike by the end of the film.
Yeah. Without giving away the ending, he does. He it ends with them two as getting closer. The tall man we ought to discuss as well, who was one of the few actors in the movie with a career before this. So
who's he played by?
He's played by Angus. Oh, you said name Scrim, is it? And I don't think that's his
Scrim.
I don't think that's his real. I think he changed his stage name.
Okay.
Just prior to this, so he might have used it for a few. But I think he's stuck with that name. Because when we watched this on the Blu-ray, the actor gave an intro, didn't he?
Oh yeah, it's like a race of arch actually intro. It's like when I heard I was to play an alien, I thought, is this some kind of immigrant who has travelled to the new land of America?
Then he's like, no. But yeah, he 49 movie credits. Also in Wishmaster, I don't know why that keeps coming up, and Chopping Mall, loads of stuff.
Oh, okay.
And he was in all of the sequels, bringing back the character. His last movie performance, but he died in 2016, was in part 5.
Yeah.
Which we will get to at some point. We're not going to do these that quick, so we'll do it over time. Because
I'm a teacher.
Yeah, so. And I've got other stuff to do, like watch other films. So we'll get to it at some point. But I think he gives a rather menacing performance. I like it.
Yeah, he knows when to move and when not to move. He holds it very still a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And he has this sort of deep stentorian voice.
Boy! Yes, it does the bloke from Oliver Twist. It's kind of that, isn't it?
It is like his sort of memories of an evil head teacher from childhood or something.
And just it's great. The director said that he worked with him on another film. And he was very young at the time. He was only 22 when he made this. So when he worked in the other film, he must have been a lot younger. There's a lot of mistakes. And he said that he just sort of talked to this actor.
Yeah.
And he'd look at him like that as if, what are you doing? And that put the chill in him.
Oh.
And he's like, I'll cast him as this.
Yeah.
And in one of his earlier films, it was a drama and there was a jump scare in it. And when he watched it with an audience, that reaction... He's like, I've got to get into horror.
Yeah.
So that's why he done it. And I think he does it really well. I mean, there's bits of it. We sat and watched this together and we did laugh quite a bit. But can you imagine watching this in 1979 in a theatre? It would have been quite scary, I think.
I think it has a kind of eeriness to it.
Yeah.
I really do like a lot of the set designs. They're quite strange. Some of them, like inside this sort of crematorium, it's weird. It's like a kind of postmodern crematorium. Like it's got this sort of strange, like tiling. It's like
looks kind
fake,
sort of marble.
It's like fake marble tiling, and then like this sort of it's a Greco-Roman style bust of heads.
Yeah,
just completely out of place above one of the doors. And these archways, like it feels like this really weird, slightly unreal space. I was saying that the house that the brothers live in as well, like, just is quite odd.
Yeah.
In terms of like everything's slightly emptied out, and I don't know if that's deliberate or not. It might just be that they, hadn't bought lots of props to fill up the spaces, but it makes everything feel kind of slightly unreal and slightly dreamlike.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw someone describe them as Lynchian. I wouldn't quite go that far.
Yeah,
but they do have a certain kind of uncanny dreamlike quality.
This is I honestly don't know if that's deliberate or because it was so low budget.
Yeah,
they just got what they could and it worked.
I do think it's impressive that it does work. Like you need good performances, and actually, I think all the performances, especially. I'd say from the young lad playing Mike.
Michael Baldwin, his name, by the way.
Yeah, and I think he gives a really convincing performance.
Yeah.
There's a kind of performance where he's in almost every scene.
Yeah.
And child actors can really sink a film.
Yes. And for it to be a low budget one, to find someone like that.
Yeah.
And I'm quite surprised he hasn't gone on to more because. Really, all he's done, apart from sort of the odd cameo and stuff, is this franchise.
Yeah, and he's great in it.
Yeah, to carry a film like that, and child actors can be really annoying, and he isn't.
No, I think he's a really oddly likeable character.
Yeah.
I think if I'd watched it as a teenager, I would have liked him.
Yeah.
I think it's partly because he's so resourceful.
Yeah.
You know, he stands up for himself and he seems to, you know, come up with ways out of situations.
Yeah. It's almost like he is that kid that kids want to be.
Yeah.
Because I said when he is being resourceful, when he blows the bit off the door, I'm like, if that's happened to me, I'll just lie on the bed and cry.
Yeah, you wouldn't be like taking a shotgun shell to a hammer.
Yeah. So yeah, he sort of carries it well. And I think he kind of outacts his brother at times.
I think he does.
Yeah.
Not that I think that matters too much. I think there is. You said about how they were calling each other their real names, or their character names are their real names.
Yeah.
In order to kind of give it, I don't know, an earnestness maybe, or a kind of truthfulness. And I do think it's also, it has some goofy jokes, and the shot of the woman's boobs does feel a bit gratuitous, but generally it feels quite earnest. It feels like it is on some level trying to deal with the idea of death, and like how it's really hard to get your head around the idea that someone's there one day and the next they're not, and everyone else keeps on living and the world keeps on going, and they've gone somewhere and they don't exist anymore, and that's weird, right? It's a hard thing to get your head around, especially when you were a kid. And like the great mystery of death and the fact that no one really knows what happens after you die. And I think it's trying on some level to, deal with that, and how confused and out of place you'd feel as a kid if you've lost, this main character, he's lost both his parents and then a friend,
This is the thing as well, because there's a lot of dreamlike sequences. He has just lost his parents. A lot of it is it all in his head because of this? You can interpret this film in many different ways. I personally just interpret it as a fun sort of fun sci-fi horror. But there is more to it. But also the fact that, going back to what I said earlier, the fact that it is kind of open.
I think maybe that's what people mean when they call it Lynchian. Because even though, it's not as, accomplished as Lynch is in terms of maintaining that atmosphere, I think it does earn... Sometimes if a film goes, it was all a dream, that's feels like a complete cop-out. But actually, I think it works here because it does feel very uncertain, unsteady all the way through.
I think, was it Dallas ruined a lot of those, all the dreams. But it's just, like I said, watching it now, it's the first time I've watched it with anyone other than my mum. When I first watched it, we were like, what the hell? It must have been on, I think it was on the Horror Channel, which if you're not British, the Horror Channel used to be a Sky channel that only showed horror films, and then for some reason Star Trek during the day. Now it's called Legend, and it shows action films and horror. But I watched loads of stuff like this throughout the years, and this one stuck out, and that's the reason I bought the box set.
I'm afraid I was probably just watching Bleach on the Anime Channel at the same time.
Might have been watching on Bravo, if you remember Bravo. But another little, while we're talking about the Mike, interesting little story I found online. Lemmy from Motorhead was a fan of this film.
Oh yeah,
he watched it at some early premiere.
Yeah,
and he was interested in Mike's hairdo, and apparently I'm not making this up. That's where he got the idea for Ace of Spades, because it's shaped like that. And he was just scribbling notes. Yes, if it's on IMDb on the trivia. I don't know if someone just made that up, but it's on there.
Yeah.
But it does sound very sort of Lemmy would have been into this sort of these sort of crazy movies. But another thing I find strange is. It took 10 years to make a sequel, and it was a big hit. I mean, it cost $300,000 to make, and somewhere I read that it took something like 22 million over time, which is
a lot.
Very, very good for the budget.
Yeah.
And then the second movie, it took 10 years, but the director had done Beastmaster in between. So have you ever seen Beastmaster?
No, I've heard of it.
It's one I grew up liking, but it's a bit. I don't know. It's dated a lot.
Yeah.
It was that movie where they dyed the fur of a tiger or something for real in it, which is really off-putting. But that went on to spawn a lot of sequels and TV series and stuff. I didn't know if you'd done seen any of his other films. He's done Bubba Hotep more recently. That was in the 90s.
My brother really liked Bubba Hotep.
Yeah. Have you seen it?
I haven't. I remember. I probably had it on It's probably one of the films that I got on DVD or even video when I was, first getting into films. Never got around to watching, and probably just lent it to my brother, and he liked it.
Because that's Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
In an old people's home, thinks he's Elvis.
Yeah.
And there's a mummy.
Yeah.
that was one that when I was in college, it never got a cinema release, but everyone was talking about.
Yeah.
And there was like people. I remember a friend got the DVD from America imported before it got a UK release.
Yeah.
And then he was like, I've seen it, and then wouldn't lend it to me. And I've since seen it. It's good.
Yeah.
It's a good, very, very low budget as well.
Yeah.
Bruce Campbell as Elvis. What else do you want in a film?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and he also done more recently a film I haven't seen called John Dies in the End.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I remember that coming out. I think, is it based on the novel?
Yeah. I've not seen that, but I know the end. So I think a good filmmaker from what I've seen, and like I said, looking forward to the rest. And the film is shot really well, and we were talking all the way through about the special effects.
The special effects are really solid for a low budget film.
Yeah. The sphere stuff. There's the bit that I'd actually forgotten about. A finger's chopped off it's from the tool man, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then he puts it in a box, and the box is all shaky, which looks kind of cool and campy. Then it turns into like this little critter type creature,
yeah,
which is a bonkers scene.
It's a really funny little sort of little black critter with some frizzy hair.
Yeah. So
sharp teeth.
Reminded me of a small critter.
Yeah.
You talk about critters, but that is one of my favourite franchises.
And then they have to act as though they're being attacked by this critter,
which was a bit
throw themselves around.
Have you ever seen the Monty Python Graham Chaplin wrestling himself scene?
Quite possibly.
It reminded me of that when because he's sort of got a towel around it or something. So it's like he's fighting himself. But little bits like that I've totally forgotten about. Really enjoyable.
Yeah.
Because the bits you remember are the sphere. And
so the sphere is quite a cool design. So it is just this sort of metallic sphere, but then these sharp kind of blades come out the front, and then it seems to attach itself. It sort of flies at great speed towards one, bonks into their head, and then I guess sort of penetrates their skull.
Yeah.
And then I guess it sort of drills into them, and then it has an opening at the back which sort of siphons off all the blood.
Yeah.
So it's like they kind of drill into the head or the brain, and then all the blood siphons out through the back hole.
Yeah, which when you see it go into the head, it looks really cool. It's practical special effects on low budget. Yeah. The whole thing flying looks great, which was just literally, I think, someone throwing one and then reversing it, and that's and then when the blood's coming out of it, there's a pipe in the actor's arm or something with the blood pumping out.
Neat. And didn't you say that? So when there's a sort of crypt security guard or something, I don't even quite know who he is, but anyway,
he's the equivalent of a red shirt in Star Trek.
Yeah.
He shows up and then just dies.
So he gets it, but then he wets himself as he dies, and he said that's the reason why it was going to get an X rating.
It was going to get an X rating, and they done the thing of we'll tell them we've edited it and then just send it back.
Yeah,
which used to work quite a bit by all accounts in these documentaries I've watched, and they said no, and then somehow it got through. I think generally because someone like on the board was a fan of the film, but they say it might not be urine. It could just be something else come out of the sphere. So that was the excuses they used,
I see.
Which they didn't buy. But interestingly, it's a 15 now, which I think is a fair.
Yeah, I think 15 sounds right to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing when it came out it was 18, just by the violence and the sex, but there's not much bad language in it.
No, there's not. I mean,
and a lot of the violence is dreamlike.
Yeah, I can't.
You know, it's one of those. I mean, what are your thoughts on? I don't know if you know that recently, Nightmare on Elm Street, the original one's gone down to a 15 because the argument is most of the violence is in the dream world.
See, I'm not sure. I think maybe with Nightmare on Elm Street, it feels so seedy though. It's such a sleazy feeling film.
Yeah, and just like the bed scene with all the blood.
Yeah,
I know it's ridiculous, but it's gruesome.
Nasty. Yeah,
and the fact that it's happening to teenagers. I mean, when the new Nightmare came out, which was the last one apart from Freddy vs. Jason with Robert Englund, I saw that in the cinema when I was about 15. It was a 15.
Okay.
I might have been a bit younger actually, but it was a 15 certificate. And I can remember when it came on video, it went up to an 18, and BBFC changed it because basically Freddy's going after a little child in it opposed to a teenager, so they thought that was harsher, and I think that is still an 18 for that reason.
I mean, obviously there's part of me that feels like, especially with the internet, what does it matter? Kids are going to watch it. Like, loads of the kids, well, certainly enough kids at the school I work at. Well, not wanting to defame the school. There's nothing the school can do about it. Watch the Terrifier movies.
Yeah.
For instance, and they're nasty.
They are. But they're also
and kids get killed in them.
Yeah, and they are so ridiculous though, and it's difficult because I don't actually know my stance on it. I haven't thought about it hard enough. But I used to watch these films when I was young.
You're all right. You're a decent guy.
Yeah, I mean, I've not been caught for anything. But no, jokes aside, I mean, that's part of my love of horror, and I think that everybody's different, and different people can. So I think as a safety measure, have the certificates there. But anyone.
It's hard. It's very hard to anticipate what you're going to find disturbing as well, right? Yeah. Because the things like you mentioned, what was it you mentioned before we started recording? Finding disturbed. Yeah.
Carnival of Souls.
Carnival of Souls. Yeah. Carnival of Souls is a film that I'd think, maybe it'd be. I can't remember what the rating is.
12 now, I think.
Yeah.
Well, it was 15.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I'd think, Carnival of Souls. Yeah, I'd show that to a 12-year-old. Yeah. Sure. But you said that was one of the few films that you watched when you were young, even though there's nothing very gratuitous in Carnival of Souls, there's very little explicit violence.
It was the imagery, It's I mean, I can remember as well, and it was a PG then. The very first scene in Ghostbusters, where one of the first scenes when the ghost jumps out of the library, scared the crap out of me as a kid. And I think different things can scare kids. So it's not so much what's scary; it's what's I get the sexual side of it.
It's tricky because again, kids now have access. And it's funny because I find on the bit of digression, on the Discord, one of the Discords I'm a member of, which is really a Discord for this sort of guy who makes really good indie horror games, actually, called James. Very good. I'd recommend his stuff. Yeah. But there are people who are also fans of anime and visual novels, and there's a lot of people get very upset and concerned on there, or some people about, say, the kind of dodgy sexualization, especially of teenagers, that you get in anime and visual novels, and I get that. That definitely that is there. Yeah. But then part of me feels like, God, there's so many teenagers now. When you look at surveys, and there've been studies into this, who look at Pornhub, say, and my understanding, not that I've got, I don't got it, but my understanding from what I've read is that the kind of stuff available there is much harder, much nastier, much more exploitative than the kind of stuff that would have been around when we were kids. Yeah. That it's, there's violence is much more common, even if it's simulated, a lot of it's very borderline, and, and that, frankly, a lot of kids are exposed to quite extreme stuff through the internet, and part of me feels like, is it a bit silly to spend too much time worrying about sort of fictional representations, especially animated representations, when a lot of kids are watching real hardcore pornography, to be honest? Yeah. I think that might be an issue, but I kind of feel like that's probably more of a concern.
It's almost like this more serious stuff has actually made us realise that the stuff in horror films isn't that bad. And it's like the whole, everyone's going woke now thing. So many film certificates, this doesn't get talked about, are going down a certificate. Yeah, right. Because, it's outrage that Mary Poppins is now a PG because there is a racist comment in it, right? So it should be a PG, right? In my opinion, right? But then it's not a story that a Friday the 13th film is now a 15. Yeah. Because the way that the media wants us to think that everyone's being soft now, when it's not. We're actually getting tougher up as a society, I think.
I think so too. It is funny there, and you've got to think, as ever, who's making the money? Why is this narrative being sold? Because I saw some ridiculous headline on the front cover of the Sun yesterday or the day before, saying, your taxpayers' money being spent on trans-friendly robots or something, and it's like, well, okay, what does this mean? What does that actually mean? So, okay, money being spent on robots, that sounds likely. What does it mean trans-friendly? Is it that the robots don't, I don't know, assume the user's pronouns or something? It's probably something quite asinine and fine. That no one's actually going to be. If you go into the detail. Yeah, it's completely inoffensive, and no one would actually get that bothered by.
Yeah, so they see that using that will spark certain people to be annoyed.
Yeah.
So let's use that. So anyway, what did you think of the music of Phantasm?
The music is absolutely great. So, as you said at one point, it kind of sounds like they're doing, although pre-Halloween, the Halloween soundtrack and the soundtrack to The Exorcist at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's this sort of odd kind of gothic spooky organ music that also goes into like Tubular Bells, like Mike Oldfield.
Yeah.
That was really good.
The music's great. It was Freddie Myro, who I don't really know, but he's done a few soundtracks.
Okay.
A film called Scarecrow in '73 and a lot of stuff after this. He done the first 3 and then passed away, and then people he worked with done the rest of the music.
Okay, but yeah, I really like the soundtrack.
Really good. It adds a lot to it. The whole sound effects in general add a lot to this film, as it does in a lot of horror.
Yeah.
But the noises like the dwarves make and stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because the sound effects are quite cartoony at times on the folio. But like, yeah, the dwarves make these sort of chittering and roaring noises. They're like sort of strange, angry little animals.
Yeah,
I guess.
they look. Anyone's seen it? Exactly like the Jawas, is that the word from Star Wars?
Yeah, I know what you mean. The little aliens with the black hounds over there.
Yeah, and this was made around the same time. It came out just after. Could be coincidence, or it could just be another sci-fi. Influence in there. But that's I said in the intro to this that this is the perfect film I think for this podcast. We're mainly a horror podcast, but we do sci-fi as well.
Yeah.
So it's got them elements, and but I don't know. I was I was looking forward to watching this again, but I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought.
It's a really enjoyable film.
Yeah, it's 89 minutes.
It's really likeable.
Yeah, and well paced. It's a bit mad, and there's action in it. There's the car chases and.
A bit where Mike has to jump out the car window.
Yeah, and cars explode by hitting trees, and just you can see that it's made for that almost drive-in audience of teenagers, but there's a bit more to it. It's a bit more.
It's a little bit artier than that. It has a few more ideas, and it feels like it's made by a group of people who are really enjoying making the film, who are like thinking about, hey, how can we do this special effect?
Yeah.
Oh, like you said that Suspiria is meant to be an influence on it.
Yeah.
And I can imagine like a young guy. I watched Suspiria as a teenager, and I can imagine, watching Suspiria being like, whoa, look at those colours, look at those special effects, look, how do they do that? And there is that kind of enthusiasm for filmmaking in it, which is really cool. Yeah,
it is. It's kind of, it reminded me a bit of, something like Evil Dead, things like that as well. Of I think they sort of the special effects we were commenting all the way through how good they are, but I bet a lot of that was accidental. They discovered there was something about the light on the sphere where they could see themselves in it, and it's focusing. I think they accidentally worked out how to do that. And I do think, obviously we didn't have time here, that if you pause it in certain bits, you can see the camera crew in the ball. Things like that are there, but it didn't feel that cheap.
It doesn't feel janky.
No.
I do think that the quality of Mike's acting combined with the soundtrack go a long way.
Yeah.
And everything else is competent. Like it's it's decently edited.
Yeah.
There are some really not all of the cinematography is amazing, but there are some really great shots.
Great moments in there. Yeah. The bit where he's sort of running through the graveyard looked really cool.
Yeah.
But it also released in '79. And it was shot over a year, and considering he was, I think, 14 when they first started filming, there's not noticeable bits where you'd think he'd look a bit older in some bits.
Doesn't.
But he doesn't. No. Looks really cool. He's fat. We did say it looked earlier 70s than it is.
It does. Or I do wonder if that's also because obviously I don't know if there are any semi-autobiographical elements to the screenplay, but it is very much You said he was only in his 20s making this film.
Yeah, he was 22,
He's young. Yeah. And so it's like, he probably wrote it a bit up before that. Yeah. And it kind of, if it's him writing, reflecting on his own kind of adolescence, and it's based around adolescent experiences, it would kind of make sense that it feels like it's set about,
True, yeah.
About at least 5-6 years before when he was younger.
Yeah.
So.
And, it felt to me, or looked very... time period of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so mid-70s. A lot of denim in it. Everyone's wearing denim.
That is true.
More denim than Shakin' Stevens' wardrobe. So that's a lot of denim. But that looks cool. And the Reggie character with his skullet. It's like things like that in films now. You wouldn't have a character with like. You don't get people sort of in their 40s, which I think he's supposed to be.
He's also like just this sort of odd. Like he's kind of uncool and kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, he seems amicable and he plays a guitar, but then he's got that kind of ratty ponytail.
Yeah. But there's nothing creepy about him. Where you think, if you to look at an ice cream, like, there has been a horror film with Clint Howard called The Ice Cream Man, hasn't there? Where he plays a creepy. I haven't seen it, but so you'd think with all the creepiness in this film, they'd add a character like that to be menacing.
Yeah, and he's not at all. I think. Well, there's nothing particularly ironic in this film.
No,
I wouldn't say.
No, there's. I don't know. It's kind of. I don't know. It's weird because it's creepy, but also quite a nice film.
Well, that's what I meant about it being oddly innocent.
Yeah,
in a surprising way. Like, that's why I think it feels to me quite different. Say, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or definitely even Evil Dead. Like, Evil Dead's a fun film. It's a nasty film.
Yeah.
Right. It feels kind of mean spirited. Like, for me, an interesting comparison would actually be a film I don't like very much, which I imagine you do, which is Drag Me to Hell. Which is...
really liked it first watch, struggled when I watched it again.
So it's like Drag Me to Hell, which in a way, similar on some level, lots of goofiness.
Yeah.
But it's really mean-spirited. I think there's a kind of nastiness to it, and a kind of... that it feels like you kind of meant to dislike the main character and kind of feel like everything that happens to her, well, she deserves it.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, I don't know, the characters are all kind of likeable and...
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the fact that the main kid's lost both his parents, you can't really make that character. Even if he was being horrible,
you could understand
it. Yeah. But apparently the actor was a bit of a dick on set.
Oh, really?
and playing pranks on the actress who I mentioned the name earlier, who played the lady in Lavender. Yeah. There's a scene where there's like stuff blowing towards her on the floor and Reggie. The kid put a load of rocks and stuff in it, so it all.
Oh my gosh!
And in an interview, he's like, "Yeah, they always mention that because they don't remember anything else because they're so old." It was just like, but it seemed like it was just him being a kid having fun.
Yeah.
And now they all get on because they won the sequels together. They've all sort of grown up together. But imagine, you've got to think they've done this. They filmed it every year, every weekend. So he's probably in school. So
well, he doesn't go to school in the film.
No, he doesn't. So he's probably in school. And then at weekends, he had to have that let out, have a bit of fun. And, but I like stuff. There's a lot of behind the scenes stories on this, and so it was a big hit. But you could see why it's remained a cult classic.
Oh yeah, there's something really likeable about it, and I can definitely think if it's a film that I'd watched when I was younger, I would really remember it fondly. I think. Yeah,
it's strange that I think I liked it when I saw it before, but I don't know. There's this.
Maybe it didn't have enough killings for you.
Probably not enough killings. Killings in it are good, but I think almost like I've been waiting for something like this so I can go through them and analyse them. Yeah. And now actually, I've never even looked at the sequels. I watched the documentary and just seeing the clips of the sequels that look fantastic. I mean, that's why I do this podcast. I love a cheesy horror sequel. Don't get me wrong, there are some friggin' terrible ones. But
I know Evolution of Horror did all of the Hellraiser films, and frankly,
did they do them all?
Yes.
Oh my god.
And frankly, I don't think I want to watch all.
No, I mean, I've got a friend of a friend is a massive Hellraiser fan, and talking about get her on here to do them, but I'm not going past part 4 for Hellraiser. I'll do the remake from a few years ago, because that was alright. But 1 to 4 are cool. But the trouble with those films are they got scripts for other things and just filtered in Hellraiser.
Oh, I've heard this. Yeah.
So I've watched a few of them and I just can't. I'm like, but when I say horror sequels, I like give me any Nightmare on Elm Street, any Friday the 13th, things like Leprechaun are fun.
I prefer Nightmare 2 and 3 to the first Nightmare.
Really?
Yeah.
I think they're more fun. They're more rewatchable.
Yeah.
But it is that the first one's so iconic. Yeah, the second one...
I really like the second one.
The second one gets better with every watch, I think. And it's the undertone.
I just love... Well, it's not even undertone. It's so homoerotic. I don't think it's even an undertone. Right. Like, the idea that the director has said, oh, no, that's not there. It's not homoerotic. Seems wild to me.
Yeah. The main teenager in it. I've got it. I've read it. He's written a book.
Yeah,
from the point of view of the character, like a diary.
That sounds great.
More comes into it. Yeah. I met the guy, really, really friendly, and he loves it. He's really embraced it.
Yeah.
And sequels like that, and there's something I'm doing. I'll probably coincide with this.
I guess you've got all the Child's Play films.
Doing House as well.
Oh, cool.
The American house.
Yeah, not Hausu.
No. But I mean, but for this is the first one I'll be doing when I haven't seen them. So the flow of these episodes might be different.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. We'll have to see.
I can see you sort of looking around the DVDs.
I am looking around your monumental DVD collection.
There's quite a few. I've got Children of the Corn. No, I'm not doing all them. But no, hopefully I'll get to talk to more people, and people who want to come and talk about these films can do it. And I'm also going to be comparing originals to remakes.
Nice.
The last episode was Time Machine, the 1960 and 2002. Going to be doing Total Recall and RoboCop in a sort of Paul Verhoeven double episode, which should be interesting because I watched the original RoboCop and Total Recall, recently enjoyed them. Total Recall, I remember the remake being okay, not great, but the remake of RoboCop I absolutely hated.
Oh, did it?
So I'm going to give it another go. Yeah. Maybe going in knowing I'm not going to like it, I might like it more.
Yeah.
So so I mean, anything else you want to say about Phantasm while we're?
No, apart from the fact that, I'd recommend it, and I don't feel like the first 5 minutes. Like, I totally understand if someone watches the first 5 minutes and is like, oh, that was a really gratuitous shot of a woman's breast, I don't think I'm going to watch this. I'd get it, but I personally don't feel like it's a sleazy film overall. No. Like,
I will say as well, don't go in. If you enjoy the first 5 minutes,
that's a fair point. Yeah. No, I liked it. I'd recommend it, and I'll definitely be listening to the soundtrack on its own.
Yes, yeah. It's a great soundtrack. I'm gonna be. I was about to not advertise Spotify, but people probably listen to it on Spotify.
It might be on Tidal.
Yeah. See if it's on there and give it a listen later. But your other stuff you've done. Let's give that a quick mention. Your podcast.
Oh, my podcast. Well, Still Scared is my podcast. It's been going for like 7 years now.
You started that when you was 20?
Something like that. A bit older than 20. But so that's on children's horror. So we do books, films, TV, and games. Basically, there aren't that many children's horror video games, I will admit. Obviously, there's Five Nights at Freddy's. I think the best. Interestingly, I think the best episodes are the ones which have been on a series. So I think our best episodes are the ones from the Deptford Mice books. I don't know if you ever read those.
No,
they're nasty. No. they're surprisingly unpleasant for like kids horror, kind of horror dark. We sometimes veer into the dark fantasy. I guess we did Return to Oz. For instance,
cool!
Which I love.
That's a great film.
So good.
Yeah.
Done quite a few Roald Dolls, as you'd imagine. So we're doing actually. Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator.
Oh, cool.
Next, which is very strange. I'm hoping like that now Netflix have bought all of Roald Dahl's works, that there'll be a good film adaptation of it.
That was actually the first Roald Dahl one I read.
Really?
I've seen the film of Willy Wonka, and that was the first book of his I read and owned.
Yeah, it really unsettled me as a kid. The idea that if you remember the Zeros,
I don't remember much. I was very young.
So they go in the elevator and as they descend, they go backwards in age to get younger and younger. There's this idea that after they go past a certain point, they go into the minus numbers.
Oh, right.
And they become like progressively less alive. I guess there's like ghosts, but
that's dark.
Yeah. There's some weird stuff in it.
Yeah.
We did The Witches, obviously.
Yeah.
I wasn't too keen on the new version of the film, actually.
I haven't seen it. Anne Hathaway's in it.
Yeah, Anne Hathaway's all right in it.
Yeah, don't get me. I used to love Zemeckis. He's here. What came out quite recently was okay.
I didn't see it. But it's a weird thing because I've read the comic, and it's a very strange comic to adapt into a film.
I didn't even realise it was.
Yeah, because like the comic is like just fragments and scenes of lives lived in this house from the prehistoric to the future, but like it's not a coherent narrative. It's just randoms.
Yeah, this sort of goes through. It starts. Dinosaurs not very quickly. Then it basically focuses on the life of this one guy there for a long period of time.
Yeah, it seems like a weird one to adapt because the comic is very much like a bit. To be fair, a bit like how Watchmen and some of Alan Moore's is very much with the comic medium. Yeah. So it's like, okay, we're going to have lots of frames within frames. So the frames within the comic work as windows to the past. So you'll get like, frames within frames.
Yeah.
So you'll get a scene in the modern day and then a frame showing where that location was 10,000 years ago, and then where that location was 20 years ago, and all the things almost like they're going on at the same time.
Okay.
And so it's neat. It's a neat experiment in comics, but why on earth it was decided to adapt it to a film? I don't know. It was,
for me, the best thing he's done in a while. But
okay. Not a fan of the Polar Express?
I've watched it for the first time this year. Didn't hate it.
Okay.
Yeah, Steven Tyler as an elf was cool. But so many people have told me they hated it.
Yeah.
I went in really thinking I
do hate.
But I mean, his version of Pinocchio recently was pretty bad.
Was it? Oh,
and that's on Disney Plus. But no, was a great director.
Yeah.
Nothing will ever take away how cool Romance in the Stone was. That was a great film. But yeah, so we've totally got off. I forgot what we were talking about.
Well, so what else I've done? So Still Scared, and I also did. So if anyone listens to Evolution of Horror and you're a patron, I did a special episode on Czech horror because my postgrad's on Czech animation. So yeah, I was invited on by Mike to do it on Czech horror films, which was really fun.
So I listened to a couple of weeks ago, and now I've got loads of films I want to watch because you. In less than 2 hours, you cover so much in that.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I'd already watched quite a few, and then I basically watched any Czech horror film I could get my hands on in a short space of time.
But really interesting, and so I don't think I've come away from a podcast wanting to watch so many different films.
Nice, thanks.
But yeah, I still haven't got around to watching any. But I will. One of them's in front of me here. Actually.
Oh, and did you say I've got to give this a? You said you want a star rating.
One thing I do want to mention as well for your. I've got a kids horror to recommend for you.
Yes.
Which, coming from me, you'll laugh when I say which one I recommend, but I think it's great.
Yeah.
Halloween, kids 90-minute movie. Ernest Scared Stupid. Have you
seen
it?
I haven't ever seen Ernest. Maybe you should come on the podcast to discuss it.
I'll gladly talk about that. It's Eartha Kitt, and they recycle the clowns from Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Oh, I do like
as the trolls in it.
Okay, I do like the clowns from Killer Clowns.
Yeah, it's worth.
I do think Killer Clowns from Outer Space is almost a kids' horror movie. Oh, yes. If you took out a few of the kind of dodgier jokes, some of the innuendo, basically, it would basically be a kids' horror film.
I think it's 12 at the moment.
That makes sense.
My version of because it's been reissued since I've got it, was a 12.
I think a lot of 12-year-olds would like that film.
Yeah, so it's fun. But also would freak because a lot of people are scared of clowns now for some reason.
That's true.
So, but they're idiots. Have you noticed that people who are scared of clowns also like attention? Sorry. I do apologise if you are scared of clowns. You can't see it, but we're dressed as clowns doing this just to freak you out.
But I'll give it 3 out. If it's 5, I'll give it 3 out of 5. Yeah. Almost 3.5. I think. It's a really, it's got its limitations, but it's a really great, ambitious film, and it's a lot of fun. I definitely recommend it. Yeah,
and I'm going to give it a 4 because there's some good kills in it. I like a good kill. James, who come on the Candyman episode, loves the fact that I can like a film if it's terrible just because there's some good kills in it, but I can. And that's what I like.
Yeah, and it does mean that when you don't like a film, like if I go on your letterbox and it says you don't, I'm like, this must be a bad film if Andy hates this film.
It's true. Yeah, every year now I try to find 10 films I don't like.
Yeah.
Last year there was 9. I couldn't find 10. But and I watched 288 at cinema last year. So we'll see. But anyway, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And I look forward to doing the second part at some point.
Cheers.
Right, I just really want to quickly mention this Blu-ray release I mentioned at the beginning of the show. You may have heard they're remaking or reimagining in live action form the Masters of the Universe franchise. Now, in 1987, the original live action movie was released starring Dolph Lundgren, a movie I actually love. I've done an episode on it on my previous podcast, ACM's Vault of Cult, where I showed the movie to some people who hadn't seen it before. But it's finally got a Blu-ray release. I mean, it was made in 1987, and this first time in the UK it's had a release. I've had an imported version of it for a while from America, which was basically just a movie. It's released through 88 Films, packaged beautifully. There's a cardboard sleeve, and then a harder sort of covered version, which is all sparkly and stuff. And you've got a 40-page picture booklet. There's no words in it, but lots of stills from the film, and a poster. Also a double-sided cover of the original artwork and some newer artwork. Really recommend this if you're a fan of the film, which, to be honest, is sort of renowned for being bad, but I know loads of people who love it. So yeah, if you're a fan, go out and get it, because there's loads on it. There's a commentary from the director, Gary Goddard. Now, this commentary has been available before on the DVD, but you've not been able to get the DVD in this country for years. I remember it being a good, solid commentary, quite honest as well. It also features a short making of documentary, about 5-6 minutes long, from 1987. Stills gallery, there's teaser trailer and original trailer, but best of all, there's some more recent interviews with the director. That one's a 45-minute interview, also with Dolph Lundgren, sort of 10-15 minute one, then shorter interviews with one of the producers and the co-writer, as well as the production designer. All these were recorded for the Electric Boogaloo Canon documentary. Another one I've got imported from America, because you can't get it, a physical copy of it in this country, but they're longer interviews, go into a lot of detail, so there's lots of extra stuff on there. The picture quality is fantastic. I was actually going to review the film again for you as part of this episode, shorter on my own. Like, if you've heard the previous episodes, I try to do that, but I thought I'd leave it because the new movie is set to come out in 2026. Hopefully I'll still be doing this then, and I'll go and see the new movie, and maybe I can compare the two, or take someone along who hasn't seen this one and show it to them back to back and see what they think. So yeah, just wanted to mention that if you're fans of the film. It's the reason I do it, I don't want to sort of plug things, but I haven't really seen it advertised anywhere or on social media or whatever. I just, being a fan, I look it up every now and then, and months ago I saw it was coming out, so I pre-ordered it. Get your paws on that, and then like with the Phantasm films, let me know what you think. Let's get interacting. So yeah, cheers. I just want to add that on the end. Thanks for listening. The next episode will be the return of Ian Pointer, who was on the Time Machine one, the last release before this, and we'll be discussing RoboCop and from 1987 and its remake in 2014. Looking forward to that one. A massive fan of the original RoboCop. I've not seen the remake since it came out, and there's a reason for that. Hopefully I'll enjoy it more next time. Also coming up, all being well, I'll be doing a comparison from I haven't seen it yet, but there's a new film called Street Trash, which some places I've read says it's a remake of the 1987 kind of gory B movie, but other places saying it's actually a sequel to that movie. I don't know. I can't get a defined answer on either, so I'm going to watch, because I've just bought the Blu-ray of that, and it doesn't actually say whether it's a remake or a sequel or what. So I'm going to watch those, and I've hopefully got someone to come on a show and we can compare the two, or at least review the newer one. So yeah, thanks a lot for listening. Follow, subscribe, share, all that stuff. Spread the word, and let's just get talking about some horror and sci-fi. We'll be back very soon.